Reddit Ask Me Anything. I am a British Army veteran who worked alongside special forces in Afghanistan detaining high-valued targets. I am a British Army veteran. I worked alongside special forces of all nations in Afghanistan. I was tasked with assisting SF in locating and detaining high-value Taliban insurgents. Ask me anything. Mods have my proof. Is it true that soldiers are told to look the other way in regards to the practice of bachabazi, aka normalized pedophilia in Afghanistan? Yes, this is completely true. It happens and nobody does anything about it. Did you ever notice or experience any cultural clashes between the different nations' soldiers that you were working with? Not really. In terms of special forces, the teams generally have a massive mutual respect for each other. However, the Americans had orders that they were under no circumstances allowed to drink alcohol or gamble with the British, so you can work that one out. Haha. Have you ever had to enter into one of those crazy underground compounds? If so, what was it like conducting a mission inside there? I have had to clear out cellars, but underground like tunnel systems, no. I think they were mainly the cave systems in the north of Afghan which the Americans dealt with, the poor buggers. Stairs in general are a hard thing to navigate, but plenty of flashbangs and plenty of speed usually does the trick. The element of surprise is the main ingredient to all room searches. Did you have any experiences which did not happen at all like you might have imagined? For example, a family friend who served said the first time he experienced close combat was complete chaos. Just 5 minutes of pure panic and deafening noise. The complete chaos, pure panic, deafening noise is completely accurate. Something that didn't happen at all like I imagined is the absolute boredom when you're not on a mission. Hours of just working out for no reason because there is nothing else to do. Did you have hearing protections during those situations? If not, did you notice long-term effects of noise exposure, hearing loss, tinnitus? Yes, you have hearing protection, but nobody wears it because you can't hear orders. Yeah mate, my hearing is terrible now. What's your favorite MRE ration? They're all horrendous. However, if I had a choice, it would have to be the full English breakfast or the chicken in yellow curry and rice. This is gonna sound so weird, but how helpful were the medics? What kind of training did they have to go through? Also, how big of a part did computer science guys play? Like, how much did they help and what did they do? You have good and bad medics. Usually the ones attached to us are the best, but bad medics do slip through the net of training and end up in the field. The medics I've had have been amazing. Complete professionalism in some of the hardest scenarios. Not sure about computer science. I'm sure they do all their sneaky intelligence stuff, but I'm not even going to pretend that I understand it. Haha. I'm into war movies. Which movie in your opinion presents the tactics of combat and the emotional battles the soldiers have to endure the best to the public? A British film called Kajaki. I've never seen a film represent the chaos of a situation so accurately. How favorably did Afghan civilians tend to perceive the British and American forces in Afghanistan? Were they pleased that they were being protected? Or did they resent you as an occupying force? It differs from location. To answer this in the best way, you need to understand the social climate in Afghanistan. You have the NATO countries who are assisting locals, building schools, electricity, water, and they are clearly grateful for this. But when you leave, the Taliban move in and threaten the locals for speaking to us, and a lot worse if they found out a local had given information. The communities where NATO held were very welcoming to the extent that they would tell you where the Taliban had planted IEDs and such. However, the further you go out, the more the Taliban had a hold on the local population, and they would all disappear as soon as they knew you were coming. But again, this was a massive indicator that something was about to kick off, because the locals would all disappear and then you'd get incoming. So it's extremely difficult to answer your question, and it all depends on what village you were in. The difference in opinions were so vast. How do you feel about NATO now getting out of Afghanistan? With Taliban most likely back in power, I for one was really hoping we would have Afghan Redditors soon. It's a shame the region still needs a lot of help, but money talks and I'm afraid many are sick of spending it. I agree with you. I made with a lot of Afghan translators, really nice people, and it's sad that they are still fighting the same fight. What sort of training were you given for manhunting of this sort? What type of support did you provide? The training was extremely intense. 9 months pre-deployment training of close quarter battle simulations, handling of prisoners, handling of intel, sensitive information handling, that sort of stuff. The special forces gathered the intel on the suspects. We were a section of pathfinders who were tasked with detaining said suspects. Usually the special forces would join in on the missions to try and get information on the ground and collect the evidence such as laptops and stuff. What skills did you learn in the military that you use in your everyday life? Teamwork and hard work. If you are allowed to briefly summarize, did you ever have a favorite successful capture? The one that sticks out in my mind. It was funny afterwards, but at the time it could have gone horribly wrong. We had solid intel that a man we'll call Mr. A was gonna be in a compound at a certain time. We had quite a while to prepare and the usual nerves start to set in. Getting your equipment ready, cleaning weapons and checking explosives for entry. We arrived there at that certain time and not only was it incredibly dark, no moonlight, the compound they had told us about was actually 3 separate compounds connected like terraced houses. Our radios were absolutely useless at the best of times, but we did our best to clarify which compound Mr. A was in and got sweet FA back. The officer in charge on the ground decided we'd gamble on the 3-in-1 chance. So we stacked up on the first compound and detonated the side of the wall out. I was first in and I was met by a very confused and aggressive farmer who wasn't overly pleased that we just destroyed the side of his house. So after doing a quick sweep and clearing each room, nothing, we stacked up on compound number 2 in sort of a frantic rush as now we were sure they knew we were coming. We blew the wall out again and entered with a lot more aggression this time, expecting to come under contact as soon as we entered. But the odds were clearly against us as the second compound was empty and it looked like it was used as some kind of storage. Now the panic had really set in as we knew what we were entering was now going to be an extremely dangerous bloke who knew we were there and we had to go in anyway. We blow the side of the third house and enter half expecting the first man in to be shot instantly. To our surprise and luck, Mr. A and one of his buddies were still fast asleep on the floor. They were so out of it from smoking opium they'd not even heard the first 2 blasts and they woke up to me screaming at them with a rifle in their face. All in all a massive shit show that we all absolute piss ourselves about now. I've never gambled at a casino or anywhere since haha. Compensation was paid at way above market price for the damage to the farmer's house also. Thank you for your work and doing this. Ask me anything. I have a few questions. Of course feel free to answer as many or as few as you'd like. Sounds like you worked alongside both conventional and special forces. What do you think on a personal level? Personality, mindset, intangibles, sets a SF guy from a typical infantryman, and what are a few words of advice you would give to people that will soon join the military, especially working in the Middle East? What do you think you feared the most? Did this differ from what your teammates feared the most? Thanks again. Personality, not much. Although I think SF hold themselves to a higher level of professionalism, you wouldn't see us joking around in front of other units and such as much as Reg INF. And SF blokes have an inhuman way disconnecting their brain from feeling pain. In terms of fitness, I've never seen anything like it. Running insane amounts of distance with instant amounts of weight on their back, incredibly painful, and they just have the ability to get on with it. It's very impressive. As it was my first time in combat, I will honestly say I feared freezing under contact more than anything. I never told anyone that, but I was worried that I didn't know how I would react. That was soon put to rest though haha. I guess that's different from the other lads in my team as they had been in combat. I don't know what they feared, probably losing a limb. What was your loadout? And does your loadout change depending on the intel? It changes on intel like you said, but standard for everything is weapon, NVGs, ammo, radios, standard grenade, fast grenade, smoke grenade, medkit, snacks, water, tie wraps, for detaining, warm clothes, temperature drops a lot. Someone will have metal detector for mine sweeping. Someone will have ladders. We moved quite light, but a lot of infantry units would be out with 60-100 kilograms on their backs. What's the worst thing you saw there? Did you have many nightmares at the time and after that time? Worst thing I saw was the aftermath of a Taliban school shooting. The engineers, I am not sure if British or American, had built a school for a local community. The Taliban weren't happy because girls were allowed to go to the school there. I think the school was operational for about 2 weeks before we got reports of an attack. When we turned up, they had shot every young girl at point blank to send a message. That one stays with me. Nightmares whilst I was there? No. You're so busy you don't get a minute to dwell on things. But since I have left the military I started struggling. I've received a lot of help from charities and I'm getting a lot better. I had been given advice about talking to people about what I experienced, hence the idea to do an Ask Me Anything. So it's sort of therapy for me and I guess it's interesting to others. That's heartbreaking. I can't imagine how traumatic that was to see, and for the families of the girls. What's your favorite dinosaur? Velociraptor. Would you suggest this as a career? Absolutely. My time in the army provided experiences that people would struggle to even imagine in good and bad ways. But even when you're in the bad situations, your bond with the lads around you is enough to get you through anything. Always laughing and always part of a team, and I think being part of a team is so important in life. You feel like you can take on anything and it carries with you when you leave the army. The confidence shows in job interviews and such. What was one of your best, most rewarding moments while working overseas? Also, please tell us something interesting about Afghanistan we foreigners may not know, i.e. a cool cultural or traditional thing. Most rewarding was probably my time in Africa during the Ebola crisis. We were taking supplies to affected regions, water and food. The usual suspects run straight up to the truck and start trying to grab stuff, but I used to take a box of water and food and walk around to the kids and elderly who were too weak to come to the van. I didn't have to do this, as the community are supposed to distribute it amongst themselves. But seeing these kids who are so weak they can't even get up to get food crack a smile when you sit with them is honestly the best feeling in the world. And something about Afghan. The rural areas don't have toilet paper, so if the locals go to shake your hand with their left hand, it's probably very unclean and they do it as a massive sign of disrespect to you. And I think many Middle Eastern people take a left-handed shake as a big sign of disrespect. Hey, do you guys still use those shitty zap straps to tie people's wrists? In 2008 that was a NATO standard in my training as a Canadian. Yes we do.